Welcome, everyone. This is National Kitchen and Bath Association. You're here for the second webinar of the month called Renovation Costs, Reframing Homeowner Expectations with Liza Hausman, who's the Vice President in Industry Marketing with HOUZZ. And we also want to thank Gebert for generously sponsoring today's session, as well as all of our sessions for the month of October. And Liza, if you're there, we're ready to get started. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Debbie, and welcome and hello to everybody today. As Debbie said, my name is Liza Hausman. I'm the Vice President of Industry Marketing at HOUZZ and work with all the industry professionals in our community, and very happy to have you here today. Today we're going to be talking about renovation costs and how to reframe homeowner expectations. And I think the twist on this is, I think the gold standard here is how do you both set homeowner expectations for costs and communicate your particular value at the same time. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to accomplish both of those. A little housekeeping before we get started. I think as Debbie mentioned, there's a panel where you can enter questions. I think it says chat, and we're going to do a Q&A at the end, and Debbie will ask me the questions that come in through that chat feature, so please use that if questions come up along the way. With that, let's get started. Now, we often hear from the folks in our community that potential clients typically don't have experience with what remodeling really costs, right? As you know, when you get first-time remodelers, they can really get sticker shock when they receive an estimate or quote. And to be fair, right, it's hard without context. It's very hard for people who are new to the process to evaluate whether bids or estimates are accurate or fair. And the anxiety that the clients feel as a result of that can really be a roadblock to moving forward, right? It's how do they pull the trigger if they can't get comfortable? Now, fortunately, there are many creative ways to educate homeowners about costs and help them get comfortable with what really need to spend to complete that dream space, and also to help them understand why you are worth every penny. And again, I'm going to come back to that time and again through our presentation and make sure that we're doing dual duty with this exercise, both getting clients comfortable, but also helping them really. So we're going to talk a little bit about how homeowners are budgeting and planning, a little bit about research. We're going to go into ways to navigate conversations about costs with your potential clients. We're going to look into opportunities to put those costs into context, how you can demonstrate your unique value by providing more information and a focus on education. And finally, we're going to discuss a value-based pricing model that can really help not only really differentiate you, but provide that education, also really help folks who've never been through the process before, understand how the sausage gets made and really value all the behind-the-scenes work that you do to get a project to completion. So every year, if you're not familiar, HOUZZ conducts a survey of our homeowners. We usually get about 100 to 200,000 folks to respond, and so we really get incredible granular data year after year. But it's a survey to understand what motivates homeowners to renovate and the different ways they approach those projects. So our 2018 survey gathered responses from about 150,000 homeowners, and according to that survey, 77% said that they did have a budget in mind when planning their renovation project. The good news that we're seeing trend-wise is that homeowners are being more deliberate about their projects, and they're typically doing some research in advance of hiring and working with a professional. Now, that being said, nearly half of the homeowners who participated in the survey said they went over budget. Only 6% said they finished under budget. So how can you prepare a client for that high likelihood that going over budget is most likely going to happen, or to help them understand, what it means to stay on budget. Now, staying on budget, part of the challenge is that they don't understand what's going to bust the budget. So helping them to understand what commonly is a budget buster can help manage some of the expectations. In the 2019 survey, we asked about top renovation challenges. And staying on budget was tied for the top challenge, with 32% of respondents stating that as an issue. Now, in the House and Home survey among homeowners who've renovated, the most frequently cited reasons for going over budget are, number one, they decided to buy more expensive products or materials. We all run into that. The products and services were more expensive than expected. They decided to change project scope or design, right? All the change orders that you deal with. The project was more complex than expected, or unexpected construction-related issues came up. So this information really highlights the potential disconnect between the planning and execution stages of a renovation, that homeowners are willing to reframe their expectations, particularly if costs are being put into perspective with clear direction, right, from you. The decision to buy more expensive products and materials, right, is one of the main things that you can guide during the scope. Now, whether it's because they simply preferred a certain style or look, or they upgraded materials, again, it's an area you can guide. So let's focus on how you can be more proactive when it comes to managing homeowner expectations around renovation costs. So I think one of the things that's most frustrating for pros is that there are so many questionable resources about where homeowners can get information about renovation costs, right? There's a lot of data, right, on TV shows, homeowners Google data, and even if information is accurate, right, it may not be accurate for your particular geography and market, and it may not be specific to the scope of the project that the homeowner is looking at. And so it can be very frustrating when a homeowner kind of comes into a conversation having done some research online or on TV, whether it's blogs or friends or neighbors or coworkers, right? There's a ton of information kind of coming in their way or that they're seeking out that really doesn't necessarily match up with what's going on in your particular area or with the scope of project or, again, the type of work that you do. And that means your clients really have collected assumptions around a renovation budget from sources with really varying degrees of context and accuracy. And chances are they're really going to have to rely on your professional experience to realign their expectations. And I know, again, part of why we've done this webinar so often, and I think with a lot of positive response, is that it can be really frustrating that you're not only sort of setting expectations out of the blue, you're having to set expectations when homeowners are coming in with a lot of misconceptions. So let's talk a little bit about dispelling those misconceptions. We've done surveys of our professional community as well, and we found that there are really some interesting ways to navigate conversations around budgets and actual costs. Obviously the biggest one is that making sure your potential client understands that every project is unique, right, and an estimate is customized based on their specific wish list and requirements. So even just starting with the market where you do business, right, when we look at our house and home data from 2019 and we look at the top 10 markets alone, median spend on renovations, varies $10,000 to $20,000 market to market. And just like property values can vary substantially from one market to the next, renovation costs can as well. And I think having a conversation around that about how property values differ market to market really kind of homeowners thinking about why their project may not match the example that maybe they found on the internet. Material selection is another differentiator. Again, this is an area where 42% of our house and home respondents say they tend to go over budget. Oftentimes when a homeowner is looking at a project, it's difficult to discern, right, what types of materials are used, right? This image is one example. It's certainly clear to you as professionals when you look at it what type of materials are in there and the cost difference. But for many homeowners, they see, oh, it's a white kitchen, must be very similar. And so we'll talk about value-based pricing later on in this presentation. But one area where many of our pros start to handle this is offering, right, packages at different levels with different grades of materials that work best for the homeowner's budget. So again, when a homeowner is basing their expected budget around someone else's project, it's helpful and important to help them identify areas where costs are likely to vary. Some of those areas include, right, layout and floor plan, right, changes with electrical and plumbing, the size, the scope, the complexity, right, how big is their space? How does their space compare to the space that they used as their baseline example? Our House and Home study found that size is, really important for kitchens and bathrooms. Major remodels of rooms 100 square feet and larger were more than twice the median costs of all kitchen or bath projects. And again, the size, the impact of the size of the space is probably not surprising to you, but homeowners inexperienced with renovation may not understand just how much size impacts the cost of the project. And of course, age and condition of the home, right? The underlying surprises that may come up to get up to code or that you find inside the walls. So all of these factors contribute to project costs. And again, they probably seem totally obvious to you as seasoned professionals in our industry. But these are some of the elements that most homeowners just really don't know to take into consideration. And so taking the time to give them that framework of all of the different pieces that can impact renovation cost really can help go a long way towards getting them comfortable, not just with the project overall, but with working and you providing your particular expertise. So another great way to kind of offer context to a homeowner who's really just trying to get their bearings, as well as to build credibility with you and your company in particular, is to discuss a renovation budget in relation to the home's overall value. A spokesman for the Appraisal Institute in an interview with Money Magazine suggested that renovations be budgeted based on the approximate value of each room as a percentage of the overall value of the home. And again, that puts the market, your particular market, into context for the work. They gave estimates of, kitchens about 10 to 15% of value, master bathroom about 10%, a powder or guest bath at about 5%. So for example, if your homeowner had a property valued at about $1 million, you could reasonably budget $50,000 for a guest bath renovation, whereas in a $200,000 home, that budget might be closer to $10,000. And of course, right, these are guidelines. When you have markets where property values are extremely high or extremely low, these don't always apply. But again, you can always use these numbers if they work for you in your particular context with your particular client, again, to be able to provide a third-party perspective on costs. Now, another challenge that comes up when talking through renovations is the idea of, what's going to get me the best bang for my buck. And this is always hard because, as we all know, there may not be a direct return on investment for a project. And of course, even if there is, that return might really vary. So even so, it's still important for homeowners to feel like they're making a good investment. And understanding where homeowners perceive the biggest return on investment can also help you determine the areas where you may be able to push more on budget. So in this example, going back to our House and Home study, when asked about their perceived return on investment. So again, they're not necessarily selling their house. They don't have a direct way to value the return on investment for any particular project. But when asked about their perceived return on investment, homeowners felt the following renovation projects had the highest returns. Lucky for us, kitchen, number 1, master bath, number 2, guest and other bathroom, number 3. And you can see kind of in the color boxes, what the how it really breaks out. So positive ROI came up at about 80% of the time. And I think understanding how important the renovation is to the homeowner can really help kind of frame the expectations of what they should invest. Another point, while 67% of homeowners say that a home's resale value is important when making the decision to renovate, 89% said that improving the home's design was even more important. And of course, that's where you as professionals have that opportunity to demonstrate expertise. People want to personalize their homes. They're looking to make them right for their family for the long term. They're not necessarily planning to sell this house in the short term, and even less so these days. And so, you really have the opportunity, and I'm sure you're already doing it every day, to play that role of making people feel even better about the money that they're investing in their homes. So that takes us into our next section. Some of the ways to put costs into perspective we've covered. We want to take a step further and look at how many pros and industry experts encourage homeowners to really see the unique value they offer. So according to our survey, finding the lowest cost professional is really not the primary consideration when homeowners on HOUZZ are looking to hire. And what are they looking for? Well, 78% are looking for good reviews and recommendations. 62% are looking for experience with the scope of their particular project, and 52% want good communication and organization. So, when you're going in to speak to homeowners about bid or an estimate or about their project in general, right? These are the things that you want to make sure that you're communicating your experience with the scope, how you communicate, how you organize. So let's look at some of the ways in which you show your value and set homeowner expectations at the same time. These include, opportunities to provide information to educate homeowners, establishing a value-based pricing model, and let's talk a little bit about pricing. So homeowners are generally interested in pricing at two stages: early on, when they're trying to determine if their general budget is realistic, and also right before making a hiring decision when evaluating estimates. So let's start with early on in the process. Some of the top tips we have for discussing budgets and proposals. I think the biggest one really is walking a potential client through the details of a past project. You can, of course, make it anonymous so they can't see where the property is or who the client was, but when you can show them actual costs for a project, it can really help them understand it's not you just saying, hey, this is what it costs, this is proof of what it actually costs. Another strategy, and we'll go through some examples of this, is, when you provide a budget, adjust based on the feedback, right? How many of you have had issues with a client, giving you their budget, right? Not many people want to, just throw out a budget because they worry to give you a number that you're going to spend rather than tell them what's needed, right? In this case, you give them a budget and adjust based on their feedback. And one note I want to make kind of through all of this, that you see your pricing practices. So while you want to work within a client's budget, asking if they're asking you to kind of work within a pricing structure that you do or that you're not comfortable with, those are ones you do want to walk away with. What works best for you and your business. So let's look at some examples in practice. So Sanctuary Kitchen and Bath Design had some great advice. They said most of the time when we meet with a potential new customer, they will indicated that they were drawn to our company by a particular photo. One of the best tools I have is to bring a copy of the contract showing the actual cost of the project that was in the picture that they liked. I walk them through the different materials and design fees associated with the project and discuss similarities and differences between their own project and the one in the picture. Our customers appreciate that we share information that is real, and it sets budget expectations at a realistic level from the very beginning. I love this quote because, again, this is a great way for you as professionals to both provide more information. It's still kind of in a private way, one-on-one with your client. You're not having to publish it, but you're providing, a feeling of information transparency to a prospective client. But actually going through that process and doing that education process also is showing your expertise, talking through how their project is different, again, showing your particular expertise. And I love at how effective this is at customers really kind of feeling that Sanctuary Kitchen and Bath Design is willing to share this level of information with them, and it makes them a lot more comfortable. Another pro that we spoke to said when people are shopping price as their first priority, to do the unknown, right? They're unfamiliar with the industry. They're trying to find a base from which to start their education. Price seems to be the easiest place to start. I feel it's very important to educate them from the first meeting with these 4 rules. Understand that you get what you pay for. Number 2, knowledge and experience have value. Number 3, trust and communication have value. And 4, a good deal is when both parties are happy, right? You're not going to get a result. The client's not going to get a result if the professional feel like you're being compensated appropriately for your services. And again, putting all these things out on the table And having these conversations up front with your clients is a really great way to start understanding how they think, what's important to them, and start helping them think about the aspects of a project that they may not have been. And I really want to emphasize this. I talk to so many professionals, right, and they can get really frustrated by clients who are kind of focused on price and trying to get the best deal. And unfortunately, we live in a kind of instant gratification world most of the time, and people are used to kind of short-term transactions and buying what they want, and going into kind of a longer-term, larger scope project is often unfamiliar. And so sometimes it's just kind of reorienting them and giving them things to think about that they really haven't thought about in the past. And so again, put yourself in your client's shoes. They really don't have your expertise and experience, and you really want to start from scratch and with baby steps. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about talking about pricing and other ways to kind of navigate some of these conversations. In general, when it comes to pricing, marketing experts say that buyers appreciate a timely and useful answer. So if you're reluctant to discuss pricing specifics because you're concerned you might discourage a client before you really have the opportunity to communicate your value, industry experts recommend quoting a preliminary price and then adding in an exploratory question to keep the dialogue open. So price plus question is one example. For example, you could say something like, similar projects to yours, right, that I've done are in the range of X dollars. What other considerations are you factoring into your decision? So the idea is to kind of start to put out an initial range or price, but turn that really into a follow-up conversation that, again, makes this a dialogue and not just a quote. Price plus benefit. So this will come up when we talk about value-based pricing later, but maybe you say, hey, here's an estimate included in this price is X, which will help you do Y. How important is that to you, right? So really trying to understand and help them value the things that you're including. And the third is price plus personalization. Okay, I think this is the right option for you based on, X that I've heard during our conversations over and over again. I have a few other questions. I want to make sure that I'm on the right track here. And the goal here really is to prompt or continue the conversation. And again, I can't emphasize that enough. We'll talk about this a little bit later in pricing, but right, if you ask a yes or no question, or you give a single price, then the answer is yes or no, right? What do you think of this? Yes or no. If you give people options, or you give them again a price plus some follow-up questions, and again the goal is to continue that back and forth so you can get to that place where both you and your client are happy. So Premier Cabinets of Virginia, their best advice, they say, first I ask, have you set a budget for your project? Most say they have no idea what a remodel costs, so my next question is, would you like me to give you a rough idea of a minimum cost? I start with some basic concepts like semi-custom cabinetry will be hard to find at less than $200 per linear foot, with demo of existing and installation of new. How big is your kitchen? A direct approach like that gives me the opportunity to begin building trust and a true relationship. I think the best way to gain clients is to earn their business, and education is the key. And again, education absolutely is the key. I know it can be time consuming. I know it can be exhausting, can be frustrating, but there really is no better way to build trust and have the client, all around to you and at the price that you're comfortable with than with providing additional education. This is actually a chart that the NKBA provides, and so hopefully you guys are tapping into the NKBA's great resources, but they also provide information that can help you find opportunities to provide, external pricing guidelines, points of view that don't necessarily come from you, that can also give clients a sense of your credibility and transparency. So one option where you don't necessarily have to get into a specific estimate, but where you can kind of talk about, hey, in a particular project, how do the different parts of the project break down in terms of percentage of total cost? Again, tapping into some of these third-party details can really give clients a sense that, hey, you know what the industry averages are, you're really tapped into the best and latest information out there, and then you can build on top of that with the things that are specific to your business and to your client's project. Now, whenever you're promoting your business, another opportunity again to set expectations, because we find that often, right, homeowners are contacting you after seeing a project that they love on HOUZZ, or seeing your website, right, or seeing something about your work. How do you give context around the details? Now, this particular professional, I think, is more aggressive than most that I've seen, providing both the project cost and the home value when they show the photo of the project. Obviously, that can be very sensitive information. Your clients might not actually want that information shown out there, but you don't necessarily have to go that far. And I always recommend to pros when they're promoting their projects to provide a detailed overview. Again, it doesn't have to include costs, but you can talk about the materials and some of the things that went into it. You can, in particular, talk about the problems you addressed in the project. So one of my favorite things to see when I see a photo of the project is to have a sense of like, well, what was it before, and what were the homeowner's goals, and how did this professional solve those problems. So it can be great when you're describing, putting in a description of a new project on HOUZZ, for example, not just to talk about the materials that are in there, so someone is searching for those, your photo comes up, but also to say, hey, this was a really challenging layout for a kitchen, so we reconfigured everything. Or this homeowner wanted to figure out how they include an island, or this homeowner always dreamed of, a really bright white kitchen. So whatever the particular challenges that you were able to address here, here's a great way for you to kind of set expectations that you're not just somebody that makes a pretty space, you're somebody that's going to dig in, understand, how that homeowner lives, what they're trying to accomplish, what they do and don't like about their existing space, and you're going to be that problem solver, right? That's going to be the hero that comes in and saves the day. There's really an opportunity, again, when you present any project, to not only describe the outcome, but really describe how you were that hero that saves the day. And I highly encourage that. It really helps when people are reaching out to you. They'll reach out not just because they love the finished space, but because they loved how you talked about the project. All right, another quote that I love: I meet clients at their space, we discuss the project, and I give them an estimate of the project costs then and there, including materials and labor. Usually my estimate is at least 50% higher than what they thought it would be. Then when they tell me their budget, I adjust the scope to fit their budget. This way, I am not out of a job and getting a good value for their budget. So this is another interesting approach to budgeting, right? If you've got a client that's like, oh my goodness, doing everything I want is really very expensive, or more expensive than I have money for, then you as a professional can go in and say, that's not a problem. There are ways to adjust for your budget and help them understand how to do that, right? And so that neither of you are walking away. It's a starting point to help them get to where they want to go. Another remodeler presents some advice. We present a budget range for the project immediately after our first meeting. This method gives the client a good idea of costs before any of the players put in the time and energy of building their dreams, in the case of the client, and working up estimates in our case. It also injects a potentially needed dose of reality into the equation early on. I think this raises another good situation to touch on that we see pretty often, where professionals are trying to figure out, like, how much time do I put in before I have a contract, before I have full information. And I think this really says, hey, it's good to have a good conversation about general costs right up front, so that the client, isn't crestfallen when they find out they really can't afford what they want, and you don't spend a lot of hours, working up estimates that are going to be nowhere near what this particular client can actually afford. So even though it can be uncomfortable to talk about these things, your clients will absolutely appreciate at least having something to anchor them, to set the foundation and how to think about these costs. Again, it could be around the part of the project that they may not know existed. They may not know about their particular space, their age of the home, all the things that we talked about up front, but giving them and being that trusted person who can help them start to think about what they're going to need to think through, again, will set you up and also make sure that you're not wasting your time. All Now I want to jump into value-based pricing, because I think this can be one of the most effective ways to both provide estimates that educate customers, but also really reinforce your value to the customer. So according to the Harvard Business Review, what is value-based pricing? It's the method of setting a price by which a company, you, calculates and tries to earn the differentiated worth of its product for a particular customer segment when compared to its competitor. And what that's really saying is that, if there are a lot of kitchen and bath designers or kitchen and bath remodelers out there, how is it that you can charge a premium for your services compared to somebody else? What is the way that you go about doing that so that you're actually able to earn a healthy profit and run a healthy business? So before we get into value-based pricing, I do want to take a couple moments just to talk about differentiating yourself as a business and all the things that you can talk about that will allow you ultimately to charge that premium. And so just threw out a few examples here of the kinds of things that homeowners love to hear about, what kind of expertise that you can charge a premium for, and maybe your licenses and certifications, your particular expertise for aging in place. Maybe you use particular technology tools that facilitate communication. Those are all things that make you stand out as a business. And then, of course, there are softer things. Maybe you're a woman-owned business, a family business. You love dogs. You're a trained chef. But I always encourage businesses to really think about what are the things that are going to matter to clients that you can use to talk about yourself and your expertise, so that when you do present pricing, that client feels even better about what they're getting for their dollars. So let's talk about the different options for value-based pricing. And I think the main thing that I want to point out here is that, again, we want to move away from here's the estimate, yes or no, to a good, better, best model. And that good, better, best model be done in lots of different ways. One is by service. So one option is you provide a menu to clients, a good, better, best set of choices that has, a core set of services, a larger set of services, and then an even larger set of services. And the idea is to really think about areas that the client hasn't considered that's going on behind the scenes. Maybe it has to do with choosing paint colors. Maybe it has to do with actually providing 3D renderings for space. Maybe it has to do with managing, permitting processes. Maybe it's managing the bidding process. So again, it really depends on you and the scope of your particular work. But I encourage you to lay out all of the services you can provide, even the ones that you normally just kind of assume or bundle into things that you normally do, and break them out so the client can really see all the things that they're getting for their dollars, and what it means to kind of pick a different set of services. Another thing to think about is value-based pricing by phase, right? Another option is to go to a client and say, okay, at the lowest level, I'm doing design, then I'm managing design plus bidding, and that's the next phase, or I'm doing full service and I'm going to project manage this all the way through to completion. And again, this may be completely different for your particular business, but if you're looking to provide, again, a good, better, best set of options to your clients, really helping them understand that maybe the project is broken out into phases. Maybe it's even that the client was thinking of, doing their kitchen and then doing a bathroom later. Maybe that bathroom is a third phase that you add on as a hey, if you buy into this now, it's going to save you money in the long run. It's a larger overall nut to swallow, but maybe they're thinking, gosh, you're right, maybe if I get all of these projects done together, it's going to be a lot easier for me. So again, it could be a multiple phased approach to pricing your services. And finally, another way to think about it is by service level. So, maybe, and again, these are just illustrative examples, but, maybe level one is, you're providing kind of overall plans, and level 2 is going to a higher level of service and hand holding, and then level 3 is sort of the concierge level, and I'm going to be at your house, this many times a week, or we're going to meet this many times, and I'm going to be a lot more heavily involved. It may even be the people that are involved in the project, but again, laying out multiple levels can be very helpful. And we've seen tons of feedback from professionals that when they, that they think like, oh gosh, I'm a little bit worried that, how clients are going to react to this. And I think the important thing to understand is that just using this exercise helps frame client expectations about what they do and don't get for their dollars, right? So on the be a very positive thing. They're going to see everything that you lay out, even at the lower budget level that's included and that they're going to get. But you're also going to set expectations that they may not be getting higher level of services or phase management, et cetera, of a project if they're at the baseline level. So it's helping frame those expectations. And also, not every customer is going to choose a premium package, but those that do can be worth far more. And again, we get feedback that professionals come back and say, wow, even if 10 or 20% of my potential customers choose my level 3, my gold, my platinum package, that is worth a lot of money on the table for me. And not only is it great for me, but my clients were super thrilled that I was going to provide this sort of next level of hand holding or time investment in the project. And so don't be afraid to really lay out different levels of service, different levels of management, help people understand what goes into the different levels of projects. It will set their expectations on what they should expect during the course of the project. And again, you may be leaving money on the table now by not having kind of a real premium level option that a high-end client might choose to be comfortable. So another renovator says, I always tell my clients that making things look good is only 10% of my job. The rest is in design, specification, execution, working with the team, to create the design intent. Most clients don't understand that there's a delicate and required form of communication from client to designer to contractor that can't be done correctly, efficiently, or successfully without the use of a knowledgeable designer. And of course, the same thing without a knowledgeable contractor. Most clients, again, they don't walk into this process understanding everything that you do that goes on behind the scenes. And I think really bringing that to life for them, including how you're managing and dealing with potential issues, potential delays. What is that value, that service that you're really providing beyond the design and construction side at face value? It can be really, really effective. All right, with that, I want to close with just a few notes on having conversations and having difficult conversations in particular. So I think being able to present value-based pricing, being able to have these conversations around budgeting for the very experienced, again, this may be something that you have completely covered, but you really want to be comfortable asking direct questions of clients and avoiding conversations over email, because we all know emails can be misinterpreted. So while certainly there is some communication that has to go over email, we've all had situations where we've sent or received an email that was interpreted completely differently from how it was attended, right? So we all know how dangerous email can be. And so when you have a difficult conversation or you're talking about pricing or budgeting, make sure that you're doing it in person or over the phone. And also, remember to keep it professional. Keep your emotion out of it. It can sometimes be extremely difficult because, of course, this is your business. It is your livelihood. It's everything that you think about day in and day out. But keeping it professional is a great way also to make sure that you don't misinterpret and that you don't get misinterpreted. So Amy Wolf Interior says, never let clients hide behind emails or text. Always pick up the phone or meet in person. Difficult clients are usually much more reasonable in person. And of course, difficult conversations are much easier to have in person when you can see a person. You can give them a cup of tea or have a cup of coffee or do something that reinforces the personal relationship behind what you're doing. Durango Development says, if I have a client that's sort of making me feel uncomfortable about pricing, I ask direct questions back to them. What can I do to make the project better? Are you asking for a discount? Do you feel that we are working hard or have worked hard for you? I find that usually difficult clients blur boundaries or they're passive aggressive. Direct questions eliminate the games. Again, a lot of the aggravation that professionals feel is when they don't feel like they can get a straight answer. They feel like the client is kind of playing some sort of game. Have person conversation and asking very direct questions to the client. You're the grown-up in the relationship, no matter what the situation. You're the professional, and so having these conversations again in person and as directly as possible. Even if you need to practice it beforehand with a friend, I know that helps. It helps me. It helps a lot of people to kind of say the words out loud before you actually get into that client situation. It's a lot easier to say them, but it's kind of my number one recommendation is not to let these conversations kind of spiral out of control. And with that, Deb, I'd like to turn it back over to you to what questions we've got.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Liza. So someone was just making a comment here. They said now they understand more on why the higher the price, the higher the sense of entitlement. They expect like concierge service. So that's just a comment on what you were saying.
Yeah, I think for me, that comment says, hey, we didn't lay out what was really included up front. So for sure, when you have, a client expecting a really high, with a high budget, expecting a really high-end space, they do all the details to be covered. But sometimes kind of laying that out and saying, here's what you're going to get for that budget, right, at this level. Or maybe you should have been charging an even bigger premium to say, well, not only am I going to deliver this level of detail in the finishes and fixtures, right? If you want the next level up, that's going to be the concierge level of service. So again, I think a lot of it is, if you don't fill in the blanks, clients are going to fill them in for you, right? They're going to make those assumptions. They're going to be like, well, I'm paying this much. It feels like a lot to me. I should be getting X, Y, and Z. So unless you are setting those expectations up front explicitly, right, having that conversation up front about, it could be the hours that you work, right, when you get back to them. Are you going to respond on a weekend? All of those are things that you could actually lay out in your contract or even in a proposal about not just the kind of end result, but the services that you're going to provide along the way.
Okay, that's some good advice. So someone's asking, what advice do you have to assist clients to select a builder? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. So again, I think again, I'm assuming this person is asking like, hey, how do I get them to pick me? And so, what questions do you get asked most often when you get someone in, they're sitting across the table from you? Are they asking about the service level? What are their biggest burning questions? And I would say a couple things are helpful. One is make sure that you are kind of laying out your resume, your particular expertise, why I think you are the right person for that particular project. Don't assume that they know or that they came in because they knew all of those things. Make sure you're close about it. The second one is, again, being as proactive as possible. So with the education, with asking the probing questions about their project, I think the more questions you ask, the more engaged that you feel. Again, the more likely you are to convert. And finally, I think that the good, better, best approach also helps, because when you offer multiple options, again, the answer is which one, right? The question is which. Okay, how do we set this project up for success? If you offer only one option, then it's a yes or no, and sort of ends the conversation there. So those are kind of three techniques that help a lot of professionals.
Okay, good. And then I'm not sure if you answered this, but how do you manage ask for a per hour design rate, or do you base it on the percentage model?
So many different pricing models out there. Most of what the feedback that I've gotten from you want to stick with the pricing model that you're comfortable with. So if you are not an hourly based model, if you're a don't go changing your business model for one client. Like if you decide you want to change your business model, that should be kind of a longer in-depth exercise that you go through to make sure it's really going to work for you. But you don't want to be, completely doing a 180 at the last minute when you don't really know how to structure that to ensure your profitability. So my advice is to stick to the pricing model that you're comfortable with, be able to explain to the client why this model is in their particular best interest.
Okay. So someone's asking, how do you tackle with friends who ask questions about products or reference to a general contractor without feeling they need to hire me as a designer or project manager? That's a tricky question.
So I'm
I
not sure I
think
totally
they're
understand
saying,
it. Could you restate it?
yeah, yes, I can. So I think what they're saying here is they're wondering, so like if I have a friend who's asking the designer questions about products or they're referencing a general contractor, but they don't think that they need to hire that designer as a project manager, like how would you handle that? Any ideas on that? Like friends
So
are
they sort of
asking.
feel like they're being
Yeah.
taken advantage of as a friend, like the
Yeah.
friend is
Yeah.
asking. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I think I would just be upfront. Hey, I've got projects going on. I'd be happy to manage helping you pick a general contractor for a fixed fee of X, and here's the discount I'm giving you, my friends and family discount. I've hired friends, and most of what I hear from folks that have run into this situation is, offer some sort of friends and family discount, but don't do it for free.
Okay. Let's see. Someone's asking, I would love to add the floor plan with percentages and the room and the distribution of costs pie chart included on my website. How can I do that? So that's a really long, I think, question, but maybe something.
No, that's okay. I know you're going to send out the recording. That
I am.
distribution of costs, I think we can track it down, or Debbie, maybe that's an NKBA chart, so maybe we can track that down for everybody and send it out when you send the webinar. But when you get the webinar, you could certainly recreate. I think what we did was just take any floor plan and attach the distribution, the percentage breakdown that the estimator provided. So you could just use the numbers directly from this presentation and put them on any floor plan image that you have.
Okay, good. So we're speaking someone's question. We speak about the ROI and the 5, 10, and 15% of home value for budget expectation. The person says, I see some ideas in your presentation, but what are some other ways to build off of what we already do? Does that come? I know that's a lot there, but I
I'm not
think they're
sure what they're
looking
already
for,
doing.
yeah, I'm not sure either. But I think they're just looking for ways to like, oh, how do we build out from there? And that's a very long, I think, question that I think is going to be very specific to the individual asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, uh, I think what we're trying to do is provide lots of different options for trying to anchor the client around a price range that is realistic, right? And then the building from there are the right specific conversations you have with the client about their particular project, right? The educating them about the different levels of materials and understanding how that's going to impact their particular project cost. So as we said, like walking them through the specifics of a past project that's sort of similar to what they're doing is one way to kind of sort of anchor them in a price range and help them understand what goes into it. Using these external benchmarks might be another way. You just want to have options that you think are going to, give you the best outcome with that particular client. And then, of course, that's when you get into every project is different, and let's talk about what's really important to you and helping them work through the trade-offs or helping them understand what materials, right, or all the expertise you provide, or what's going to work best with your dogs and your kids, or what's going to help you age in place, right? I mean, there's such a variety of needs out there. That's when it comes down to having a good list of questions for the client that makes them feel really heard and understood.
Okay. So that's good. Someone's asking, I often spend time explaining the price drivers of door styles and what sets the price level. Is that a good practice?
Well, if you are a door specific pro, then I think, or that's a big cost in your particular project, I think that can be helpful. I think it all depends on what are the big costs in your particular project. And I think helping people understand maybe some of the bigger costs or the surprising costs, so they may not understand that they're replacing all their doors in the project, or they want barn doors, or they want natural wood doors, or whatever they're looking for is going to be a particular premium, then sure, it's absolutely worth spending the time. And I would say that's the case for any particular element where the client is likely to have, an unpleasant surprise about the premium that they're going to pay for a product or material.
Okay. Let's see. Then this is a very basic question, but how can you help the client pick a general contractor? Do you have any suggestions on that? We may have covered that a little.
Got it. So I think making it part of your service, right? And having, maybe that is a slight, premium service if you're going to spend the time. There's so many different ways you can go with this, right? Some designers have general contractors that they work with regularly, that they trust, that they know they can execute on their vision appropriately or at the level the client is looking for. So you could, certainly refer clients to people that are going to be able to execute the project the way that you think the client is going to want it executed, and then you can help manage that process, or help them review the bids together, or even help them understand why it's a good idea to have a good relationship. So that's one option. Another is you point them to different places, or maybe they're getting referrals from a friend, or you point them to HOUZZ to look. And they come up with a short list, and then you help them with that interview process. So it really depends on kind of, you could lay out these options, and again, include them as sort of a service that you can provide to that homeowner. Especially, I think as a designer, right, there's something in it for you if your involvement is not just going to end with handing the designs over to the contractor, right? If you're going to manage it and you need to have a relationship with this person, then I think it's perfectly reasonable, to explain that to the client, and also tell them about your experience with that contractor as well, because it's essentially another review of that professional.
Okay. So at one point you were talking about those difficult conversations to have, via email. Sometimes it's better to get together in person. But someone's asking, so if you do get together in person, wouldn't it be a good idea to have some kind of a paper trail or some kind of something documented when you're meeting that person, and rather than through email or whatever, just to cover your butt, says the person.
Yeah, no, 100%. And actually, I think it's like a great business practice in general, and one that I follow, which is after any meeting, you send out a summary of the meeting, and you say, this is what we covered, this is what we agreed to. If I've missed anything or misunderstood anything, please reply and let me know right away. And that way you have that documented. 100%.
Okay.
But it absolutely is an important best practice. Yep.
That's a great idea. And then there's just a couple people asking what's the best way for questions afterward to get either questions to you or to someone at your organization. Is there a contact? I can
Sure.
put that in my email tomorrow.
Yeah, you can.
But,
Yeah, you can. They can email me. I'm just Liza, Liza at houzz.com, and I will person to answer them if it's not me.
Great. Okay, and then does HOUZZ have specific tools that they can refer to homeowners to discuss budgeting or cost of construction by region?
So the HOUZZ and Home Study is probably the best thing that we have now. We're working on a number of tools to help with that, kind of at an in-depth level. But if you go to houzz.com/research, then you can kind of find all of our studies, and the HOUZZ and Home in particular does contain regional information. And we're working on additional kind of tools on the site and app themselves that will help with that.
Okay. So someone's asking how much cost is acceptable for overages, let's say in construction. How would you handle that? Acceptable overages, let's
I
say
don't
in
know that there's kind of
construction.
an acceptable, right? Yeah. Most of the contracts will lay out, that you have to, you're going to have to deliver within the particular budget. Like exactly what is laid out has to be delivered for that particular budget. But you do want to be really clear about, how you're going to handle any change orders because, again, when you have a contract, you're going to have to eat the overages, which is why, and I know you guys are going to have the Ivy ladies talking about estimating tools and project management, being able to, make sure that you're putting together an accurate estimate that is going to be profitable for you is so important because you're held to that contract. But then, often the overages really come from clients changing their minds or choosing different materials. And so also having, a documented process and in your contract how you're going to handle those changes is super important so that you're not left holding the bag.
Yep, this is a similar question, but so when you're estimating how to determine what a general contractor's bid should be within your total budget that you gave them initially, so what would you say that percentage is?
Got it.
Or
I
maybe
see.
you
Is
don't
this,
know
I mean,
for sure.
assuming this is sort of where a designer, yeah, it's hard to say, right? Because it varies so much, but I think this is where a designer is trying to give the homeowner an idea of the construction cost. And again, this is where you say, look, until we kind of get in and see what's going on with your specific home, it's going to be impossible to be exactly accurate. But I think that's where going through examples of past projects where you know what the total budget was to not just design but build the project. Again, if these pieces are separate and it's the designer asking how to do this, I think you say, look, these are the design fees, the construction fees for similar projects in your area have been, X, Y, and Z, but we'll have to, for this kind of scope, but we're really going to have to go out and take this to a general contractor to bid on to give you the exact things. But then you can give them, ideas of, look, if we come back and it's out of budget, these are the places that we would consider making changes. Maybe it's in materials, maybe it's in not changing the layout, and really helping them understand the places where they might have to compromise if the budget turns out to be higher or the estimate turns out to be higher than they expected.
This is an interesting, I'm not sure if it's a comment or a question, but what if I work with a general contractor who is exceptional, fairly priced but high-end, and projects are smooth as butter? I'm not sure if that's a comment or a question.
Well, I think, sorry guys, I think the question there is like, is it a conflict of interest if, I prefer this particular contractor because everything goes smoothly, they are fairly priced, but they're a premium. Again, I think I would just be transparent about what they're getting. So I would say, look, these are the reasons to hire this person. I know they're honest. I think their prices are fair, but that person, the client may still choose to get a bid from other folks, and you just let them know what the trade-offs. Like, I know this will go smoothly. I know your project will likely come in on time. I know that the finishes are going to be done to the level that you're looking for. Um, but at the end of the day, if that estimate or that bid is too much for that particular client, they're going to need to have alternatives. But I think being fair about what the positives are and that you do have a relationship with that contractor and why you prefer working with them is perfectly fine to communicate. And I would still encourage them to get other bids and just let them know that, these are the things that they might run into with somebody else.
Okay, here's another one. This person says, I teach a kitchen design class at a college, and I wonder if there's advice that she can give to the students who are just starting out about how to close the sale, they don't have a lot of projects experience, but they have a lot of knowledge. Is there any advice that you
Sure.
can give to someone who's coming out of school?
Well, rather than trying to squeeze it in here, what I will say is that you can actually sign up on HOUZZ as a student, and that gets you access to all of our education. And so we have many webinars, and again, I'm sure the NKBA does too, but we have many webinars on exactly these things. pricing your services, on having difficult conversations, on closing business, on screening clients. And so I would just encourage them to take advantage of those free resources.
Okay, and then just there's one final one, and then I think we'll have to wrap it up. But this person says, when we meet to discuss all the costs and prelim budget and do all the Q&A, do you suggest that the time spent for that be a free service? And if not, how do you advise we approach potential clients to hire us before they go ahead with a project? So it's like a twofold question there. You know, spent, like the initial time spent.
Yeah,
I would
that's
assume
hard. I
that
mean,
you would, yeah.
yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to charge for that. Like if you're actually providing any sort of actual design service, or don't do any, you don't want to do any design work or drawings or any of that without probably without charging for them. But I think it's the general business practice is to be able to provide an estimate and answer questions about it. I think you could certainly try to limit the time spent. You book an hour meeting. I think it's all about setting the expectations up front, but you don't want to give them anything that they could kind of take and use with somebody else until they're actually paying you. I think that's the biggest thing there. And again, I'm happy if people want to send me questions after, I'm happy to respond. And I do want to mention that we're I hope everyone's going to KBIS. We're going to be there in force. We're sponsoring the KBIS Next Stage this year, and I'll be there. So I hope to see folks in person there in January.
Oh, great. This is great, Liza. So thanks so much for your time. And I want to thank Gebert once again for sponsoring our webinars this month. And I hope you all have a great day. And I'll definitely get this recording and Liza's contact information to all of you. Have a great day. Thanks, Liza.
Thanks, Debbie. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.